think. Oh yeah, look at that. Pro countdown. 3, 2, 1.
Nice.
Boom. And we are live. Let's check the back end here and see if YouTube finds us, and it does. And I see our faces on the stream. So let's grab that URL. Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon to you if you're out there on YouTube watching. Getting started here. Grab the URL. There it is, one watching. It might be me. There's the URL, copy link address. And throw it in the Riverside too. Yeah. Tweet. Okay. Actual links in that chat, so you'll have to.
Nice. Looks good.
Paste.
I'm going to tweet out the link.
Mm-hmm. Tweet that out.
Already has a screenshot.
Oh, great.
Nice.
And I'll just do an RT for my account real quick. Keep it simple. Retweet yours. Why not? Okay. So, howdy out there in Streamland. I'm Jerod Santa with changelog.com, and this is Uku from Plausible Analytics. Say hi. You did. So, here's what we're up to today. Let me share my screen real quick. I do have a couple of tabs open that we could at least talk through. So, back in, when was that we had you on the changelog?
That must have been May.
Yeah, May 27th.
Okay.
Of this year, we had Uku and Marco on the changelog. You guys are just broken onto the scene with Plausible Analytics. And it's this really cool analytics service. You want to just tell the folks what Plausible is real quick, and then we'll move on from there.
Yeah, it's a very simple open source alternative to Google Analytics. I think for most people, most of Google Analytics is very overkill and a little bit too complex. So we tried to build something simpler and something more, I guess, privacy friendly and to minimize data collection. So if you don't need everything that Google Analytics has, and if you prefer some open source solutions, check out Plausible.
Yeah, exactly. So we had you on the show. We were convinced. We were looking for something simple and privacy friendly. And so we hopped on the bandwagon. Back then, it wasn't open source. It has since been open sourced. And so I've been following along. It happens to also be written in Elixir, which is a language that I'm familiar with because we use it on changelog.com. And as most young early adopter users are, I have feature requests, right? So I had this feature request. I think it was actually copied over from your previous system before you were using issues. Hence, Marco is the one who submitted it, but that's actually all my words there, not Marco's. It just got imported from the old roadmap. Around traffic spikes. So this is something that we have wanted, and I guess not very many other people have said that they've wanted it, hence it hasn't been high up your priority list. So I just complained about it, and squeaky wheel gets the oil, and so to speak. And you said, hey, like you said, it hasn't really been requested all that much, but since we want it and since we like to live stream, we could code it together. Like, awesome idea. So this is the feature right here. I'll stop screen sharing now. Uku's software, Uku's machine. He's going to be driving. I'm going to be asking questions, commenting, answering questions he may have about like what we would like, and we'll just see how far we make it on this feature today.
Yeah, we haven't felt the need for this feature ourselves because we basically, Mark and I both sort of live on the dashboard. It's open all the time. So we've never had an unanticipated spike. We've always known when you post something to, well, no, it's, you always wait for you post something to Hacker News, we push out maybe one blog post per week at most.
Right, and you want to monitor that live.
Whereas you're pushing out so much content, it's difficult to monitor it all.
Yeah, and we actually also have a back catalog. So there are things, of course, when we publish a blog post or something, we will also do that, right? Like, okay, put it out in the community, see how it resonates. But we have such a large backlog of shows and of posts and content on the website that from time to time, other people will submit our stuff to Hacker News, Reddit, whatever you name your aggregator of the day. Hacker News is usually the biggest spike, but also the highest bounce rate. So, it's not the best traffic, but it's lots of traffic. And we don't know about it. Like all of a sudden we find out maybe 6 hours later, oh, we spent all day on number one on Hacker News. We would have liked to participate in that conversation, right? Like that's, first of all, it's fun and exciting when everyone's paying attention to your content, but also if you know it's being talked about, you can be part of that conversation. I think that's a valuable thing. So we always want to be notified of these. Yeah.
This speaks to how well you're doing on the organic marketing front. You have stuff going viral that you didn't even put yourself. It's
a nice problem to have, but it's also because the way we do our stuff is like mostly we're featuring other people's things. Like your show was about plausible analytics, and of course you're interested in that being talked about. And so if other people are interested in it, then they might promote it themselves. That's kind of the virtues of having guests on a podcast and stuff like that. But yeah, so we found ourselves specifically with our episode of Go Time last month, the healthcare.gov episode, which I happened to be on. And so it's like, hey, even more fun. I was on that episode. I'm not usually on Go Time, but I was that time. It made it, to the top of Hacker News. Then it got submitted to the r/Golang Reddit and was on the top of r/Golang that day as well. And we found out about it much later. We would like to know about these things when they happen. And so the feature request conceptually is simple, right? Traffic spike notifications. And I think it's for a subset of your customers, the ones who aren't living on their dashboard. I know some people pay very close attention to their analytics, and then the rest of us kind of check in once a day or once a week, but there are times when we would definitely want to know about it. So
that makes sense. Why don't I share my screen and we'll get into it?
Yeah.
Nice.
Let's do it.
So here's the whole screen. I got my setup here. I'm running Elementary OS with some terminal tabs open. I'm going to try to have the test runner on the right and two sort of files open on the left. That should be okay for most of the time.
I can see it pretty well.
Where do you want to start? There's maybe two places I can think of we can start. We can either start from the UI and the way you want to configure it from the settings, sort of do outside-in development. Imagine that the feature is really there, whereas, or we can go straight to the core logic and leave the wiring for later.
Right. So I could tell you how I would do it, but I would more curious on how you would do it. Like if you decided I'm going to pick this off, I do think we should build this. If you were alone right now, how would you think through this particular problem and how would you add this feature without me?
The way I use both approaches, usually when there's little uncertainty in what I'm doing, where I can almost visualize the code that needs to be there. That's when I sort of go outside in. I do the wiring as I go, and I'll just implement the feature as I go, sort of jumping between the views and the controllers and the things. Whereas for something like this, it feels like a much more chunky piece of logic that needs its own place and its own tests. And like this one, I would start from the core logic itself, and then wire it in to see what we need in terms of settings and all that. It probably doesn't have all that much wiring actually, because the core logic, I imagine it's going to be a recurring task on the background, so it doesn't need to be that wired into the controllers and everything. Yeah,
I mean, functionally, the way that you would code this, I assume, is some sort of background scheduled recurring thing that just goes through all of the, you can tell me how the infrastructure works, but like, is it multi-tenanted where it, how does your multi-tenancy work? It's going to loop over all of your customers who have, or all of your sites that have this configured and checks their traffic against a threshold and then emails them. I mean, that's what I would think would be the core logic, but what would you think?
Yeah, I can't really imagine much any other way to do this.
Yeah, I can't.
Just check every X minutes. Check the whole database for anyone who has a configured notification and check it against the current visitor number on that site. That
right. That would
like,
be the core logic. Then the details get to be some of the things we talked about. Maybe the UI comes into play there. If you want to pull up that issue, did you have that issue open as well? We talked through a little bit of ways that it could work. And this ultimately manifests itself in the UI, but kind of like this functionality of like notify me once and only once, notify me hourly. So some of that's just really like for people you're seeing spikes, but then you have some state management there with regards to notifications.
Right.
Maybe for the sake of this, like, you know, simple first, keep it as simple as possible, and then, you know, flesh that out. But one thing that happened, so I didn't come up with this feature idea. We used to use Go Squared, and they had this feature, and we thought it was awesome. I didn't even think about it until they had it, and it was one of the things that we missed. Like Google Analytics doesn't do this. As far as I know, there's probably services built around it that do it. But one thing that was annoying was, at the time, the way they did it was like, if you were spiking, you'd get an email. If you're still spiking an hour later, you get an email and an email and an email. And it's kind of like, yeah, I know we hit the front page of Hacker News. I don't need to be notified 7 times. Well, the entire time I'm getting that spike, right?
Yeah.
But if that's A, too much to bite off, or B, you know, a down the road concern, then really it's just a matter of like the UI is like a toggle, right? Or like enter a list of email addresses that want to be notified if you're spiking, kind of.
And the threshold.
And the threshold, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's a good first pass. Would be to just every time that background job runs, it's just going to send an email, and suppressions or deduplication can be added later on as a maybe even within our stream if we can get to it. But I don't think we need to start from there. I think we can start from the logic of just every time the worker runs, if the site is over a certain threshold, then let's send an email.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Let's build it. So our workers, the background workers, are all in. Where are they? Oh,
the workers.
It's right here. Yeah, so we have a few. The most similar to what we're doing is probably we have a few recurring tasks. So we can look at the structure of a recurring task here. We use a library. Have you worked with Open?
I have not. Nope.
Yeah. It's an awesome library for, it's kind of like Sidekick, but it does even more in the free offering. And it uses Postgres for
the back end.
Yeah, so I don't need a Redis. I can just
that is nice.
Yeah. Keeps the infrastructure simpler.
Everything I've done is just like thread.spawn or whatever the syntax is, basically. And but I don't have anything that we run where it's going to be long running and I need to, like, you know, monitor the progress or queue them up, right? It's all just like one time. I'm not running a site that has, you know, hundreds or thousands of sites inside the site. So I like the fact that you have a dependency, because it's always been, you know, the more that infrastructure dependencies, the more the pain.
Especially with Plausible, because we want people to be self-hosting this, and the more complex our infrastructure gets, the fewer people are going to go through the pain of setting it up.
Right.
So I created a file, Spike Notifier. Do you think that's a reasonable name for it?
Spike Notifier. Sounds kind of cool.
Spike Notifier.
Yeah.
What would you call it?
I'd call it that. I think it sounds pretty cool. Spike Notifier.
Nice. All right. That's good then. Actually, maybe we don't even need to wire it into Open yet. I mean, we can just
like write the module that does the work and then
do the thing, and we'll think about naming later. And yeah, it's just, I can just create a test file for it. I'll create a test file. Spike Notifier test. There we go. I usually like having tests on the left.
Why is that? Just out of habit?
Yeah. But now I can't.
Now you don't know how to.
With 3 windows, I don't know how to use Vim.
Neither do I, so we're in the same category there.
That's all right.
I can get Nerd Tree open and shut, and sometimes I can't. I don't do it often enough to even remember my particular shortcut for that.
It's not bad. Can you quit Vim?
Oh, I can quit Vim.
Oh, if you can quit, you're good.
I'm actually I'm a recovering Vim user.
Oh, okay.
I've used Vim for many years. I just don't like it like everybody else does.
Okay.
Which means I know how to quit, and I can quit in anger. Add the bang on there.
Nice. So we have a basic sort of scaffold, a module and a test going. So I would say, and we can do sort of a hello world, or how would you do the first test?
Well, I imagine that eventually you're going to loop over a set of sites, but I think you would deal with a single site first, and the test would be basically like testing if a thing is above a threshold, or it depends on, I don't know. I would say, like, what are the values at play here? You have a traffic indicator, and then you have a threshold.
Yes, we have. Yeah, so I guess notifies what customer or whatever customer when configured threshold. I mean, that's sort of the meat of the whole module. That's right. What it's going to be.
Yeah.
Is the text too small?
No, it's good.
Okay. So let's call notifier notify, I guess. Maybe call it. I sort of like thinking of the names as I'm writing the test and then changing the production codes. I think that's a better way to name things than just. And then let's send in some let's say we have current visitors on a site is like 10, and someone has a threshold. I mean, it's going to be just bigger than.
All right.
Is 5. So if we send the current visitors and the threshold, then we expect. Yeah, sorry.
Well, you'd also need to send in the customer or something, or is this thing already? Oh, yeah. Is the customer an inherent dependency or implicit dependency?
No, yeah, we don't have it. None of that is set up. Yeah, we can.
How do you do your implausible? Is it aware of certain sites and customers? Like, what are the nouns that exist?
All right. Yes. So there's we can have a user, which is insert the user, and then we can have a site, insert a site. So those are sort of this basic domain.
Okay. And just belongs to on those, like users belong to sites.
All right. The way. Yeah, I would do it is this. So a site has members.
There you go.
Who can. Right. So I guess we can just pass the site, and then that way we can get to the user from there. So we'll not make the email addresses configurable. We'll just send the email to the members list for now. And then. So I guess this is a good test case.
Now, do you have multi-member sites? Maybe ours is still set up differently, because mine is like, we have changelog and there's Jerod, and then I have like a share URL that I shared with Adam, my co-host. I don't think he has an account on Plausible though.
Yeah, the database is set up for that, but I haven't
the UI
built all the permissions, and none of that is really there. So yeah, there's someone actually created a pull request working on multi-account sites. But no, it's most of the time it's just one. But if a customer needs some support stuff done, I can add myself to the list and check out their dashboard if they give me the permission.
Gotcha.
So that's sort of why it's there.
So I will contend that perhaps a more flexible and forward-looking feature that isn't actually more difficult to code, except for that it's 2 configuration values instead of 1, is instead of emailing all the members, is you just allow for an email string to be configured. And that string can be anything that an email sending tool would accept, like a comma separated or a semicolon separated, or anything that would work there. Because then you provide, so like I could put myself and Adam in there. And then if we have another person who's like our social media intern or something, I could just add their email to that list. I don't have to add them to Plausible somehow, or I don't have to say, well, it only sends to me because I'm the only actual member. And then you have this ability. Most people will just maybe pre-populate it with the current user's email address when they sign up or something. But then all you're doing is you're not looping over the members, or you're not doing anything fancy there. You're just saying, is this site configured for spikes? If so, is it spiking? If so, send the email to this string. And if that string is like email compatible string, then it's really not that hard.
Yeah, this is what I've done for weekly reports. Is there's an array of strings. Yeah, we can use a similar structure for. In that case,
I think it's kind of elegant, because you're basically, you've done this before. You can do some copy pasting, and and in fact, we use the weekly reports, and I do send them to Adam, even though he's not an actual member, right? So I think it's useful.
Okay, so let's create the some of the stuff we need first then. So we're going to need. So I would say it goes under the site sort of domain. There's a bunch of stuff there that related to the site. So should we call it? The way I'm thinking about it is, like, normally there's just nothing there, and when you enable a weekly report, it inserts the records that we can check for. So we can probably do the same here.
So it's like a relationship between the site and the report.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a one-to-one in the schema.
Yes.
Yeah, sounds good.
Spike notification. And the reason we could put a field that says, spike notification threshold, for example, on the site, and I could even have a field for spike notification recipients or any of that stuff.
Right.
I prefer to do that. I prefer to think about how these things are queried and design it that way. So, like the weekly report or this one, it's only really queried on the settings page where it's shown, and when it's required on the background job. So I don't see a reason to pull it out of the database every time we need to pull out a site.
Right.
So I don't want this sort of, I used to do a lot of Rails, and there used to be a lot of like God objects that
pull in all the things. Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't need to pull everything out of the database every time. So.
One thing I like about that is features inevitably get more complicated, and when you have them as basically namespaced flags on a God object like site, you just keep adding more things to site, right?
Yeah.
But if you have a separate table for this, if we're going to make the spike notifications more complicated, you're complicating that table. You're not complicating the sites table, which you pull in, like you said, you query that all the time.
Exactly. So, do you think this is a reasonable schema?
Recipients, threshold, belongs to site. Yeah. I mean, I can't think of anything more complicated than an integer for threshold, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll go with that. I need to create a migration for this.
Migration for that. Yep.
I mean, this stuff is copied over. It's useful, but it's sort of useful, but it needs to change still.
Yeah. Just the attributes and stuff need to be modified slightly.
Yeah, I'll leave it for now.
Well, what you'll find is maybe we can copy that UI over as well. I don't remember what it looks like, but if we can, that makes it a pretty straightforward feature, right? You're copying work you've already done.
Oh, see, we have two repositories, so it creates migration. I always forget to specify. I should specify that it's for the Postgres repository, not for the ClickHouse repository.
What's ClickHouse then?
ClickHouse was a complexity added to the infrastructure that I wasn't able to avoid. So it's a
why or yeah,
it's a database built specifically for analytics, for web analytics. It's built by Yandex, who are the second biggest analytics provider behind Google, and some amazing person at Yandex convinced them to open source their database. So
okay,
that's what we use for Plausible. It's just, it does things that Postgres, even with timescale DB or any of the extensions to make it column-based, ClickHouse just outperforms all of them and has some features that are very specific to web analytics.
Gotcha. Interesting.
Yeah. There's a whole deep time, and I'm not an expert in ClickHouse yet, but there's a lot there.
And it's serving you pretty well, even though it's a headache.
It's not even a headache. I actually enjoy using it,
Oh,
and
okay.
it's been an amazing addition to the infrastructure.
Okay.
I
It's only
shouldn't
a
have
headache
migrated.
when you forgot that you have two repos.
Yeah. There are other headaches with it that we can get into. Maybe it's testing specifically.
Gotcha.
Actually, I don't like that I migrated my development database. I don't like. Okay.
Ooh, the old
That'll also run it on the ClickHouse
on the
one.
ClickHouse side.
Yeah. Again, I should have.
You should have caught
I think
it.
I think that's fine though. The reason I don't like migrating my development database is we're still developing and we might change stuff. So I just want to sort of play around with the test database for
Fair enough.
now.
Well, you're not on the hook to push this and roll it out to production here on the stream today. I'm gonna let you off the hook. So if you want to clean this all up and do it a second time when there's less me watching you, feel free.
No, that's perfectly fine. Test Plausible. So I've lost the test file. Test workers, spike modifier tests. So that is what I have here.
Can't find mixed test.
That's a bit strange. Oh.
Oh, it's just called notifier test.
No, it's test workers. I didn't even, maybe I namespaced it wrong. Okay, there we go.
There
So we got the tests running. So now we have a spike notification schema. We can create a factory for it, so we can use it in the test easily. I use Ex Machina, Thoughtbot for this.
I'm using that one as well.
It's great. I love the name more than anything.
It's a good movie.
It's a good movie. So for spike notification, we need a site. So let's say site is build a site. Mm-hmm. Most of the time we're going to be providing the site, but just in case you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And then we need a
threshold.
Yep. One of these. Site. Threshold. I don't know, for testing, let's say 10 or whatever. Recipients. Let's just see what it's done for the weekly report.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's just empty. Okay, for the weekly reports, you just have to pass them in.
Which is probably what we'll do anyways in this case.
That's true.
If we're using the test, you're gonna be testing those.
Yeah, we can just do the same here. Actually, just have to pass it in every time.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna have a site spike notification in the test with threshold 10 and site and recipients. Let's say Jerod. Or do you not want your name in the test?
No, go ahead. No, I do want my name in the test.
All right, nice. So actually, I can just clean these tests up a little bit because the factory is going to create a random user anyways if we don't pass it in. So I guess
just pass the site then, right?
Yeah, just pass the site with current visitors. Boom.
Now we need some. We do need an assertion here at a certain point, though.
Yes. So threshold is okay. I'm not going to deal with the case where they're exactly equal, but no, actually, when they're equal, that's the threshold. So it should send.
Yeah, like if I want 1,000 people on my site, notify me, and it hits 1,000, I want that, right? So it's not a greater than; it's a greater than or equal to.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna grab an assertion with an email.
Okay.
So we can say something like this. For email, I use Bamboo by Thoughtbot.
Same.
Which has a bit of a strange 2-field format, but that's okay. I think the first one is supposed to be like the name.
Yeah, I'm using Bamboo as well, but I don't think I have that problem. I think I send a struct all the time, or a person to almost everything, and then I tell it how to like destructure that or something.
Okay, you use the protocol.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's pull in Bamboo test here. So for some reason, my test database is not migrated. Let's see if we can get that done. No, it says it's already up. For some reason, the spike notifications. Oh, well, I just didn't write anything in the migration, that's why.
Yeah.
So what's the syntax for I have to find some old
create table
migration?
Or let me see. Grab one.
So we need a site ID, which references. No, I forgot the. Yeah, that's how you reference a site. I always have to look up this kind of stuff. The syntax for like integers and things, and of course we want to have timestamps on it. The table name is spike notifications, and we had recipients, right? Which was how do you do an array?
You should look up your report table.
Yeah. Migrations, email, migration recipients. There we go. Array of, okay, I actually use a site text extension here.
Which is case insensitive text, right?
Case insensitive text, yes. So I use that for email, for storing emails and usernames, generally speaking. So I think that's the schema. Should be good.
Yep.
So totally messed up running these migrations. So I'm gonna
Isolate your
actually
rollback.
just, yeah, and actually just roll back like this. So all it does is it changes the
current
schema.
pointer. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
Nothing to do because you didn't have it in there the first time, right? So the rollback
Yeah.
can't remove a table. I've been down this road a few times.
Yeah. Okay, we should have a database table now.
Okay.
And we should have a test. Let me see if I can restart this thing. Still no insert. Oh, wait, undefined column threshold. Did I just want to make sure I didn't misspell that one, because this is a weird word for me to spell.
Threshold is not a word common to you over there. Oh, you hit visitors.
Yeah, I did it wrong. So roll back again.
There you go. Leave the rollback this time.
Yeah, and now this was, is that right?
Threshold. THRASH. Yeah, that's right. Threshold.
Okay.
These are the kind of mistakes you only make when you're live streaming code. Like you wouldn't make these by yourself.
Of course not. I never make mistakes. Let's see. Start that again. Okay, so
all right.
We have a test, I think.
We have a test.
An assertion.
We just don't have a function. So this is a
for some reason the watcher doesn't rerun my tests.
Is it watching the wrong thing?
Oh no. Or I guess the terminal doesn't scroll.
Oh.
Either one. Okay, but we have a failing assertion, which is ideal. It took a while to get here. I mean, the assertion is a bit wrong. Let's say the subject is like,
right.
What email do you want to get when you're front page of Hacker News?
I don't know exactly. This is the hard part, right? It's like the actual copy and stuff. I think
that's
like
the most important.
I think traffic spike might be a good starting place. Traffic spike on changelog.com. Yeah, something like
that. Maybe also just to say who it's coming from.
Right. Yeah, if you have a common format for those things, then you'd want to keep it consistent.
I don't know that I do. So actually, I'm going to leave that for now.
Yeah, I'll just leave it for now.
Yeah. Traffic spike on the site. Okay. So. This shouldn't be that hard. So we don't have the notification preloaded itself. So what we need to do is pull out the spike notification from the database here. And now I noticed
you have to pass it the site as the first argument to preload.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah. And yeah, schema plausible site does not have an association spike notification. That's because
we never added it from that side.
Because we didn't do it. Yeah, so it has one spike notification. So you see a bunch of configuration values being here like this. I just upgraded to Elixir 1.11. I'm getting a bunch of compile warnings for random stuff from libraries. Okay, so we have a spike notification. Now it should be as easy as current visitors is bigger than or equal to site.spike notification.threshold. Then
you send an email.
Yeah, send an email. Let's see how we send an email. So let's look again at the weekly report. Actually, it's send email report is the file. So, oh, this is a pretty big piece of code.
Right, because you're building up a template and everything.
Yeah, but basically you grab a template and then you send it. That should be it. I have a try rescue here, and I'm trying to remember why. I think sometimes when it fails, it would sort of choke up the whole loop, because it's being run in a loop. So none of the
Nobody else is going to get theirs.
If it throws an exception, then
when would send email throw an exception? When it actually gets like a SMTP error or something like that?
Yeah, most of the time it's because the recipient has marked themselves as inactive. So it's either a hard bounce or unsubscribe or a spam notification or one of those things.
Gotcha.
So Spike. So now we need to create an email.
Yeah, what's the email object there?
Well, we need to do this, right? We need to get the recipients, hoop over those, and send an email for each of those. I'm going to pull this out into a send notification to recipient, send site, I suppose, and current visitor number as well. We're going to need that in the email at some point. So it's going to be recipient, there's going to be site, and there's going to be current visitors in the email. Cool. It says undefined. Oh, template is undefined. I'm looking at the tests now. Okay, so we still have no emails delivered because this template doesn't exist.
Right. So I gotta go create that template.
Yeah, let's jump in there. I'll create it somewhere with like weekly report. Just grab that. It's so similar to that. I'm just going to use that as sort of the base. It's much harder to develop when you don't have stuff to copy paste from.
That's right. See how fast we can do this because we're just reusing previous work.
These assigns here, we don't have that. It's just current visitors. So I try to send all the values that are used in the template as like the discrete arguments, but then when it's too many, it's
you go to
a map of them.
Right.
Yeah. Needs a tag, spike, notification. So that's used by postmark. Now, what was the subject? This is where we get to the.
Yes, traffic spike for or on. Yeah,
For
traffic spike on site.domain.
I'm going to do a weird thing. I'm going to copy the hash sign because
Why?
Because I'm on Linux and I can't get my keyboard to work with the special characters that I get with Alt. They just don't work.
Oh my goodness.
Otherwise, I'm having
Talk
fun.
about walking with a limp, man. You can't do it. You can't type the pound character. You have to copy and paste it.
I know.
The things that we do for what? For privacy? For freedom?
I don't know what.
Okay, you gotta render you don't want to render the weekly report though.
Yes, that's right. So spike.
Now we gotta create a brand new template, which is always fun. I think the site.
So we
decide
so
what goes in there.
Yeah. I'm sure the template I'm gonna do later. The actual template.
Yeah, you can just have it empty.
For this,
have it empty.
let's just do enough to make the test happy.
Yeah, like just fill it with hash marks or pound signs. That's easy.
No,
for you, right?
I can't do that.
I
can do that.
Out. Oh, there we go.
Your site has. I want to use the
current visitors. Now this assumes that it's plural, but if I set my threshold to 1, I'm just kidding. We don't want to do that. If you set your threshold to 1, you deserve to have incorrect pluralization on your email, and you're gonna get a lot of emails too.
Yeah, I was a bit confused as to why the test didn't work, but it's because we don't call.
That's right. We haven't called it yet.
Yeah. So recipient, site, and current visitors.
Okay.
Boom.
Boom. 1 test, 0 failures. Very cool. So I think what we're probably missing on the test side is to test multiple visitors. We're not actually exercising that for loop at all. So that would be either a separate test, or you can make this test a little bit more robust and have it be a couple people.
That's true. When I was at Thät, we were taught to almost like write very contrived code just to show that the test isn't exercising it. So you would do something like this. So we could make the test pass by not actually implementing the behavior. Right. We could just do that
as a step along the way.
Yeah. So this is like the proper TDD way to do this, right? You force the next test.
Right. Do you still do that, or are you just doing that because you're telling me?
No,
because I've never do that.
I skip a bunch of steps now, but sometimes when I'm pairing, I still do that. Especially when I'm ping pong pairing and I try to like get the other person to. I'm trying to control what test the next person writes.
Okay. So you break it and then you say your turn. Yeah.
Yeah, you can sort of steer it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I guess notifies multiple people then. So let's say I also want to get notified.
Right.
I'm going to use example. I don't want to use real stuff there.
You're going to have to change that. Well, so yeah, does that have like 2 asserts, or is that her way of? I think there's a way of testing for multiple emails, but you could probably just do it the easy way and just do it twice.
Yeah, I think it's just easier to do it this way.
Yeah. There we go.
Right, so I'm just going to go.
Now unbreak it. There you go. That should pass.
Yeah. And now, do you see value in keeping a test with 1 and then also having a test with multiple?
I would keep the more extreme case. I would keep the multiple and not the 1 if I was doing this myself. But
yeah,
if there's no cost to the test, like we're doing inserts, so I see cost to this test, then I would remove it because it costs. But if it's like builds and I'm not having any database interaction, I would leave it because it's like gonna run in like half a millisecond kind of thing.
Yeah,
that's usually how I think about it. We also don't have the negative test, which is it. You know, we don't want it to notify. I mean, it's basically the other side of that, greater than or equals, but it's the kind of thing that regressively you do not want to email people when it's not spiking because you accidentally change your logic somewhere else. So I would write that test.
Yes, that's a much better first test to have than.
It's also the easiest test to write the implementation for. We skip the easiest one, which is it does nothing by default, right? You get that one to pass real easily. Yeah. And you get to fail later.
That's right. Does not notify anyone if site visitors does not exceed notification threshold. I guess we could also test another negative case, which is when the current visitor number is higher, but
when it's not configured.
Yeah, when it's not configured, which in this case it actually doesn't. It would just fail.
If the emails weren't configured, what would our notifier do? Would it error, or would it just be a no op at this point?
If it was empty, the recipients, is that what you mean?
Yeah. So if I don't have it configured, but it catches a threshold. Well, the way we're going to use it is not this way, right? We're going to actually loop over the people with it configured. We're not going to check every site because that's just inefficient. So
Yeah.
Seems like it doesn't really matter. But you could use it improperly and find spikes on sites that don't have their email configured. But, so you're saying they might have a threshold configured but no emails. In that case, it would be a loop that loops over nothing, so it would probably just do nothing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, I don't know if I'd write that test if it were me.
Yeah. Cool.
There we go.
So we tested the negative case. We're sending 5, but the threshold is 10. So
cool.
No notifications are sent.
So there's your notifier. Yeah. Well, and then all you got to do is actually call it with, like, you have to have the code that gets the visitors and calls.
That's right.
We aren't actually getting the visitors from anywhere yet. We're just passing them in.
I will write, just as a forcing function, I will write does not notify anyone if threshold is met, but notification is not. Well, but there's no threshold to even check if you don't have it. Yeah, that there's no value in that test, I think.
Right.
Because if you pat, like, this function already absolutely needs the spike notification, but so there's got to be something before that. This is like the inner part of a loop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in fact, the likelihood of you in that loop. So if you think about that loop, what you're going to do, the most efficient way to run that background job, right? That scheduled job.
Yeah.
Is to fetch all the spike notifications and loop over those.
So this is not, like, if this was the inner part of the loop, then this would be a very inefficient way to do it. But we could loop over each site and then query the spike notification for each site. But this is a bit crazy. We should approach it the other way around, where we look at spike notifications.
Totally.
Pull out the sites that way. So I want to, actually, we can keep the same tests, I think, and just force it to be, So if we don't pass anything in, which is how the worker is actually going to run, you don't get any input. It's supposed to sort of figure out the sites and the current visitor numbers themselves. I'm thinking let's stub out the current visitor number for now, because I don't want to get creating test data in ClickHouse. That's the other pain point that I didn't mention earlier. But I feel like we're going to move along faster if we just stub it out for now and come back to it later. Getting the current visitor number from the actual database.
Right. So when you say stub it out, at what layer would you stub it out? Would you still call some sort of a mocked method, or would you just pass it in? Like, how do you get how do you get that? Is it a ClickHouse module that you're calling?
Yeah, so I have this ClickHouse module, which does this.
Oh, boom.
But
so could you just stub, would your spike notifier call that directly? Oh, I think I might have lost him. Come back, Uku, come back. Here he comes.
Hey, sorry about that.
I lost you. That's all right. Did you click a button that happened to be your tab or something?
No, my Chromium browser just crashed.
Gosh. All right, Linux, part 2. No £, no reliable Chrome available. I'm not going to be too hard on it.
That's right.
Okay, so you want to share your screen again? We're still going, so it's all good.
Yeah.
So we were just discussing how we would stub or mock out this ClickHouse thing.
Yeah, I would. We can probably stub out that method, that function on that ClickHouse module. So I do have something in here, something called double fetch tweet. So I used it to stub out an API. Fetch tweets test. So there's double here, and it has a Elixir didn't used to have any stubbing, but now there's
I use a library called mock, which I'm not sure if it's built in. Is it a standard library or is it a package that somebody else built? Let me look.
Yeah, I don't actually.
That's effectively what the same thing you're doing there. Mock is just a dependency of my app, so I think it's not built into the standard library. But same thing. So you're stubbing out that module's current visitors function, and you're just hard coding the return.
It's just hard coding it to 5 here.
Right.
And let's not pass in the site. So instead, let's call like run with no arguments at all. Right. So it has to figure out all of its data itself. I don't even know if I need to use this actually. I just stub that out with a 5 and then
if it gets called, it's going to return that.
Exactly. So now the run, we're going to get, I guess it's okay to just go over all the spike notifications.
I think you would have to.
You have to check every one, right?
Yeah, everybody who has it configured, you got to check theirs.
Yeah.
Unless, so when you have a one-to-one, when does the spike notifications record get created? Is it when the person configures theirs?
Yes.
Meaning, is every site going to have one even if they've never configured it, or does it get created when you configure it?
The way it works with all the other configuration options is that it gets inserted when the person configures. So it wouldn't exist in the database.
So then you could just get all of them.
Yeah. So
if it got created alongside the site, then you'd have to have some sort of a query where it's like, give me all the spike notifications with a threshold, something like that.
Yeah. But I think this is fine.
But we're good here. Cool.
So,
okay. So you're going to say, now you have to get the visitor account for each notification.
For which we need the site. So
preload the site.
We might as well just. But can we preload everything at once so that I don't want to have an n+1 query here, but maybe that's necessary. I'm just thinking, can I get all of these notification records to also sort of?
I think you could, but then I asked myself, how many of those are going to be? Well, you have to get the visitors.
Well, there's like 5,000 sites, I think, on our cloud server right now, which is not an issue loading them all in memory, I think.
Well, then it's going to be all of them with spikes configured. So it's going to be like
even less,
5%. Yeah. Of popular features, maybe 30%, right?
Yeah.
Not saying that you shouldn't preload it or load them all at once. I'm just trying to think through.
Okay.
Because you have to get because the visitor count's on the site. You got to have the site every time you have a notification. Yeah. All right.
There's no way to even get the current visitor number without. So to get the current visitor number, we're going to go. I'm just going to alias that. We're going to use it. Clickhouse, current visitors.
That just takes a single argument.
It takes a site. Yeah, why did I do 2?
Well, you had a query as well.
Let me see, because why does it take a query? I guess sometimes. I wonder if it's ever used. I think the query is pretty much pointless here. I don't think it's ever actually used. Because if you look at the stats controller, current visitors.
The query there is.
Oh, this is how. It's basically a stub. It seems.
Query from time zone, period, real time.
Right, it needs it for the time zone. That's why it needs it, because each site has its own, can be configured in a different time zone. So the current visitor number is going to be. Actually, no, it doesn't need that.
I feel like
Whatever.
current visitors is always going to be current.
Yeah, it doesn't matter the time zone. Yeah,
so right.
I'll have to look at why this argument exists. It's probably because that's how like all the other methods or functions in that module, like for all the other ones, you need to pass a query to get the like what filters are applied or
right
what the time frame.
The time frame.
But for this one, it's always no filters and.
Probably don't have access to the query module, do you? Unless it's inside the use plausible.repo.
Yeah, it's here.
There you go.
So what? Yeah, we're getting undefined.
Site does not exist.
So here, site does not exist.
Oh, because you don't. The notification is what you get. Notification.site.
So we're going to preload the site and then. And then do notification.site.timezone and notification.site. Okay, it runs. It passes because we started with a negative case.
Right. Okay. We're going to replace the bottom case. We'll get failures.
Yeah, let's do that as well. So in this case, we're going to have 10 visitors. And then this is going to be just run. And now we should fail.
There you go.
Nice.
0 emails sent.
So at this point, let's notify. Let's change this function a little bit. So this is going to be the notification instead. And we'll do it this way. Notification.site. There we go. 0 emails. I really thought that this would work.
Let's see here what we did wrong here. So notify current visitors. Notification.
What if I print out the current visitor? I wonder if the stub is set up correctly.
Yeah, if you're getting the right integer back.
Let's just look at that number. It's 0. We never configure it to be 0.
That's the default, probably.
So it's clearly not. Do I need to pass that in? I wonder. Maybe it doesn't actually swap out the module
when you stub it
in the code server. Fetch tweets. Do we pass it in here? Yeah. Okay. It's passed in. That's fine.
Fetch tweets stop.
It's not an issue, so I can just do that and default it to.
Good old-fashioned dependency injection.
Yeah. Although I do wish there was a little better support than in Elixir for stubbing stuff out.
Check out that mock library because I know I'm doing similar things you're doing. I'm not passing the dependencies around. Like I can mock and return and assert that things are called as long as it's not the module that I'm currently is under test. So it has to be, in this case, it would work just fine.
Okay.
But this should, what do we feel this time?
We also need to pass it.
Yep.
There we go.
There you go.
It's printing out the right numbers as well.
10 and 5. And the logic was sound.
I mean, if we have a settings screen where you can create this spike notification and we set this worker to run every hour,
yeah,
we have a very basic,
you're done pretty much,
functional notifier.
Yeah. We did it.
I mean, this feels like a good place to stop, but it also feels like we could
refactor this. But I don't know if that's very fun.
Do we really do this in two tests? That's feels like there should be more meat to this. You know,
well, like we said at the beginning, the logic is basically like a greater than statement, right? Like if it's configured and this, I mean, a lot of the logic is actually how you're getting the current visitors and stuff, and that's already done right over there on the ClickHouse module.
Yeah.
So there's no like querying because you've already written all that. It's just like grab the data you need, and for each site or each configured notification, do the query, and if it's over the threshold, send the email.
That's right. That's how simple it is.
That's how simple it is.
How would you, so if we wanted to have some sort of deduplication or like a suppression functionality, where you say, we'll send it every hour or
yeah,
at most, once an hour, at most once a day.
Yeah. So the simple button for that, without tracking your sends and going back to your sends, right, is to have a last sent at timestamp on your spike notification.
Nice. I like that.
And then you just check that and you say, have we sent it in the last hour? Yes. Then don't send. That way you're not having a whole bunch of state to manage.
And what makes that awesome is that then you can just filter out all the notifications that you're not going to send already.
That's true. So you're doing less checks because you have people who've just triggered, right? Like if I triggered last, and then you could run it more often.
Yeah.
So you might miss some if you're testing once an hour. Maybe I spiked it like halfway through the hour, but you missed that because your background job runs once an hour, and now I'm back down. I just missed a spike. Now most spikes last longer than an hour. Depends on what your threshold's set to. But if you could run it more often than that, but have that last sent at timestamp, then you could just no op on all those and not worry about running it more often.
Yeah, you could. That's a good idea. I think that's how I'm going to do it. Is a configuration parameter for how often you want these, and then last sent at. That's all you really need.
Mm-hmm.
I like that because we don't track. We don't have any of the databases.
You don't want to track it, and I don't think anybody wants you to track it.
The actual emails going out, yeah.
Right, just fire and forget, and just mark down. I mean, the only way that would fail is if you got real fancy and you're like telling like how many times, I don't know, like some sort of exponential backoff. Well, you could even do that with. Could you do an exponential backoff with a timestamp? No, you'd have to have another thing like how many sends have we done?
Yeah.
So you might have another column of like, last sent at, and then like number of sends, and you could calculate a back off. That's super fancy for a simple feature that nobody needs that. So it's kind of a Yagni. I think the timestamp gets you pretty much where you want to go.
Yeah, if I'm putting myself in the shoes of sort of as someone who cares about the current visitor number on my website, I probably want it at most once a day, because I see it's to me, it's very unlikely that there are two unrelated spikes within one day. I mean, maybe there are, but
yeah, It's really just the first one that matters, and then maybe you missed it because you weren't around or something. But once you know, there's very little value of like you're still spiking,
Yeah.
unless you're like completely away from your machine and you just want to get an email and feel good about it. It's not really actionable at that point. So for us, that's one of the reasons why we liked Plausible and didn't really care for GA was because they have so much stuff in there that's like not like it's navel gazy, but it's not actionable. Like the basics are actionable, but then you get a lot of analytics. Honestly, it's not actionable. It's like makes you feel good or makes you feel depressed. But how's it gonna change your next decision? But this notification sure does. It's like, oh, I know what I could do next. I could go engage in that conversation over there.
Yeah.
And be part of a conversation that's happening around my content. So beyond that, I think repeat notifications aren't super useful. Same day, because like you said, I mean, you might have another spike tomorrow, and maybe 18 hours apart you have two. So it's not like it's impossible.
Mm.
But what we found, I mean, if you look at the curves, and we've seen it, I'm sure you've seen it, is like it spikes, and then like over the next really like 36 hours, it just like slowly goes back to where it was previous, maybe with a small increase. Rarely do those spikes happen and then stop within a few hours.
I think what I'll do is at that last cent timestamp, but then I think for the first release of this feature, I'm not going to make it configurable. I'll just decide on some reasonable amount of hours to wait before notifying again. Maybe 6 or 12 or 12 hours should be good, I think.
I think so too.
And then it's good to go. All the configuration on your side would be just toggle it on and provide the threshold and recipients, which is what we have here.
Yep.
Nice.
Awesome, man. I'm excited.
Yeah.
I want this feature. It's fun to be a part of a feature, and when it shows up eventually in my Plausible UI, I'll be like, "Hey, I helped build that thing," without having to write a line of code. I didn't have to fork it. I didn't have to PR it. It's kind of funny because the open source process is intimidating, even for an open source veteran like myself, even for somebody in the same language as you. But when I get into the nitty gritty with you, like the feature is very straightforward. I'm sure I could have coded this for you, right? But it's just like the intimidation of not knowing your code base, not knowing how it all works, and how long is it going to take me, or even thinking through. Like I probably wouldn't have found the ClickHouse stuff very quickly. The fact that you just knew current visitors is what I need, right? Those barriers stop people from making meaningful contributions. But when it comes to pair programming, it's like this. I totally could have coded this for you. So it's like
I haven't paired in ages, but there was a bit of a selfish reason in doing it, in that I just want to pair with people, and I've been solo on this code base for 2 years now, and it's getting a little bit. I feel like I want to work with other people on it and get some new ideas, and then like the point you made about saving the last cent timestamp. Like I don't know if I would have come up with that myself. It probably would have built something much uglier and
more complicated.
More complex, yeah. So
it's fun. I code mostly in a silo. I mean, with changelog.com, we do have some contributors. Nick Giantakis has been using it. Most people use it as a reference, not as an actual thing they're using to build, because it's our platform for our content. It's not really like a Plausible where it's like self-host your own multi podcast news workflow thing, right? It's like built for us, but it's open source for different reasons. That being said, we do have some people who get involved, and it's always cool. And then I'm starting to work with some people we're like hiring to add some features just because my schedule is so busy, and it's fun just talking through my decisions, because I don't normally even talk through them. I just people are like, why'd you do it that way? I'm like, I have no idea. I really enjoy that challenge of thinking it through, and you don't get that when you're in a silo. So I appreciate you pairing with me too.
It's easier to cut corners when I'm alone as well, I think.
It's also easier to type when you're alone. That's the only drawback. It's like, oh no, I'm fat fingering. I didn't spell threshold correctly, or naming things on the fly. It's like, are you judging my name? It's like, well, of course I am. That's what we're doing here. We're both here judging the names, but that doesn't mean I have any better ideas than you do.
It's kind of your function as a pair is to judge my names.
Yeah, totally.
But
what would be fun? Go ahead.
Oh, maybe this is the way. You said open source is intimidating, and I see a lot of people who are active on our GitHub and probably would want to contribute, but they probably don't know how to get started, or they feel intimidated. So maybe this is something
pair with Uku.
I'll consider maybe like offering public pairing sessions on Plausible. That'd be fun.
I think that would be awesome. I might do that too on changelog, because it is fun. I live streamed changelog coding for a while. I don't know if you ever considered just streaming while you work and inviting people into that process. I find that I don't think as well when I'm online as when I'm off. Some people, it doesn't bother them. I know I could get more done, and I pace when I think, like when I'm actually trying to solve a hard problem, but I feel obligated to stand here and talk while I'm thinking, when I'm on a live stream. So there's some challenge there, but I think pairing is really a good way to do it. I have an idea for a recurring video show for changelog, which is like code with me kind of a thing, code review. But the idea is this might be a situation that's similar to that. Maybe not even working on a feature, but like diving into an open source project with the maintainer or the creator and just having them explain the code to me as, just like how it all works, and having me be kind of the layman asking the questions. I think that would be cool as well.
That's awesome. I'd be very curious for things that I don't work with on a daily basis, or rather like I work all my career. I've worked in web apps. So if someone explains how a web app is wired together, it's probably not. It's all the same.
Right. Here comes a request. I do a bunch of stuff, and then I send a response.
Probably at some point pull something out of the database. But
exactly
when it comes to things like the database itself, or a programming language, or more like foundational codes that I tend to use, or like how's a browser built? Like I don't know. I'd love someone to take me through and explain like the cycle of input and calculation, how it all works.
Exactly.
Especially like on software that is totally different from web apps. So.
Yeah, because it can be demystifying. It can also be, impressive and inspiring to a certain degree to see some people have extreme depth of knowledge on these little verticals, like how a browser works, and just to see the way their mind thinks. Jeffrey Rosenbach used to do a thing with peep code way back in the day. I'm not sure if you remember that. It was an old video tutorial thing that Jeffrey Rosenbach did. And he had a kind of a format of that. It was a video show, a lot like the Eggheads and stuff now, but probably a decade ago. And he would do kind of like pairing with an expert, and he would give them a problem to solve. Somebody who was, an experienced developer, and they wouldn't know the problem beforehand, but it would be not fizz buzzy, but like achieve it kind of like this. Like, how would you do this feature in an hour or 90 minutes? And then he would just observe them as they do it and ask them questions and stuff. And it was really cool inside the mind of an experienced developer. I think with different open source projects, you could definitely do that and just use that code as, the conversation piece. So that's an idea I'm playing around with, but I learned a lot just working with you today. It's awesome. I think I can now dive into Plausible and maybe make some contributions, just seeing how it all wires together.
Sure. Yeah. It's also easy because a lot of the libraries we use have overlap or
are the same. Yeah. It's definitely a very similar web app to the one that I work on a regular basis. What I would love for you to do next is like finish this up and polish it up the way that you would do it, and like make it either a single commit or some sort of your own PR or something, to see like what the finished code would be. No time, and you don't have to ship it by tomorrow or anything. Just when you get around to it, so that we have like an artifact that says, this is what that feature looks like when Uku, puts the polish on, or whatever you would do naturally without being live. I think that would be a cool thing to point to.
I think I'll do it. I'll try to finish it up tomorrow, and
okay,
I can post a link on Twitter as a reply to what we've done.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Well, thanks, man. Good stream. Had fun. Hey, we're hit 90 minutes like on the nose here. So we achieved where it wanted to. We didn't know if we could achieve it in 90. Turns out we had a few minutes to spare. So good job. Looking forward to it rolling into my plausible dashboard real soon here.
Yeah, nice. Well, thanks for setting this up. Yeah, it was definitely super fun. I would do this again whenever, really.
All right.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thanks for watching along if you're out there watching, and we'll hopefully do this again sometime soon.
Yeah. Bye.
Okay. I think I hit the stop button.
So it says it's recording.
Still recording. It still says stopping. It's having a hard time stopping.
The other reason I wanted to do this is because when I was a junior developer, it was around the time when Twitch was becoming a thing, and like people coding on Twitch was a tiny thing, but it was something. So I would like after work, I would watch some programming streams, especially like Gary Bernhardt was active back then, streaming and stuff. So I would watch them just to see, like, as a junior developer, how does someone who works professionally and is more experienced, how do they work, and what are their habits that I could pick up on, or even if you don't know how things fit together in the beginning, it's just you see how a web app works. Or I think it's very useful for beginners to just observe more experienced people. And you don't get a lot of opportunities to do that unless you work in a company and you can pair with more senior people. It's difficult.
That's true. I'd encourage you to set up a strike, since you code all day on this or whenever you are, and you're by yourself. Just set up and stream it. You don't have to feel obligated to like talk through or anything. I know the guys that just stream all day long and just let people watch if they want to.
I would feel obligated to.
I do too.
I think I would waste so much time prepping so that one, like, and I'll do like an hour stream where it's all, I know what I'm doing and I'm going to go through it that way and make it streamlined. The reason I like pairing, because you can't prepare, it's whatever's going to happen, it's going to happen. I guess you could prepare, but it's for pairing. I think it's easier to just go in and start thinking what we're going to do now. Whereas alone, I'm so tempted to